Hey, I'm Jim Richards, and I got some great news for you. I got a free gift for you. I want to help you. I want to bless you. I just recently published my new book, Wired for Success, Programmed for Failure. I'll tell you, this is an incredible book that teaches you how to live out of your heart, how to experience prosperity in your heart so that no matter what's going on in the world around you, you can succeed. Now listen. I wrote this book because a few years ago, God showed me what was coming to America economically. And the thing that he showed me was that people who were just barely getting by were going to go under. People who didn't know how to live the truth out of their heart would not be able to follow God's plan for success in the midst of hard times. So I've got this great book, Wired for Success, Programmed for Failure. Now listen, changing what we believe about finances and how we manage money is one of the most challenging areas of our life. So here's what I've done. If you purchase the book, Wired for Success, Programmed for Failure, you can go to my website and you can find a key word that you can use to watch 5 hours of free videos about how to apply the information in this book. That's an incredible offer. This stuff is going to help you. 5 hours of training to help you apply what you learned in this one book. It's for free. I want to be a blessing to you. I want you to succeed and have the very best.
You know, the Bible says that the blessing of the Lord makes rich and adds no trouble to it. Now, I want you to understand, you can prosper, you can do anything pretty much without God. You know, one of the things that really inflamed people about my book, The Anatomy of a Miracle, was the fact that I pointed out that anybody can get a miracle. You don't have to be saved to get a miracle. And, you know, one of the questions, attack questions, you know, there's an attack question that's really not a question, it's an accusation. But one of the attack questions I got is, well, then why would people want Jesus? And, of course, my response is, well, if the only reason you want Jesus is to get miracles, you're in trouble anyhow. You know, you can't lie to yourself and lie to the world and say you can't have success without God, because you can. You can't lie to yourself and lie to the world and say you can't make pretty phenomenal things happen without God, because you can. But the value that we have in our connection with God is the quality of life that we experience from the inside out. In other words, it doesn't matter if I can get a miracle. The question, when I'm relating to God, the question is, am I at peace? Do I enjoy life? Do I feel loved? Can I connect to the people around me? You know, the major part of God for me is the quality of relationships, first and foremost, that I can have with Him and that I can have with myself and that I can have with the world around me. And miracles or anything else would pretty much be meaningless unless you were on a power trip or something, if your personal quality of life isn't, you know, what you would want it to be. So I want you to realize there is prosperity by the sweat of your brow, and then there is the blessing of the Lord that makes rich but doesn't add trouble. Now, among our dysfunctional concepts of faith and of God and of the miraculous is the idea that faith is where you believe something that gets God to do something. That's really not what Jesus... You read Matthew 11:23 and 24. I mean, Mark 11:23, 24. You know, Jesus didn't say... first he said, have faith in God or have the faith of God. Have the same type of faith God has. And he said, now, if you have the same type of faith God has, he says, you could say to this mountain, be removed, cast in the sea, and doubt not in your heart, but believe those things happen, they shall come to pass. He did not say one thing about if you believe this, God will do this. He didn't say that. He said, this is the way you're wired, and this is the way the world around you is wired. I created a world that based on the beliefs of your own heart, you are able to live into this world and bring about phenomenal change and phenomenal transformation. So I want you to realize the blessing of the Lord is not from the perspective of I'm going to work these secret, mystical, magical Christian formulas, and this is going to get God to act in my behalf. God has said if you want favor, see, people talk about the favor of the Lord. Well, I've heard some people teach about the favor of the Lord, and you would think that you could just cheat, lie, steal, but if you had enough faith, God would make everybody like you. I mean, you know what I mean? Have you heard that kind of stuff? Where you're like, how warped favor is. If you want favor, God says, here's how you have favor. Be honest. Pay your debts, unless you can't. And let me say something. Even when you can't pay your debts, that's not a sin. And in American society, unfortunately, sometimes we make it feel like a sin. And that's one thing if you squandered what you had, and you could have paid your debts, but you might have some conscious issues over that. But the blessing of the Lord, we experience the blessing of the Lord because we harmonize our life with these principles, which really gives us the capacity for holistic success. So the blessing of the Lord makes rich and adds there's no trouble that comes with it. So I want to have a success that I don't want to prosper and be like a fool, and when I have success it destroys me. I want to have success that every step along the way this success occurs and really contributes to my marriage and contributes to my friendships and contributes to what I want to make my life about. I don't want it to take away from these things. I want it to add to these things. In other words, so I want what's going right in my life to be a blessing to me and to the people around me. So here's one of the things that I realize is that when anytime your level of success exceeds your sense of self, you begin to have pressure and stress and negative feelings. Everybody get that? You always want to keep the expansion of your success very, very consistent or congruent with your expansion of your sense of self, because otherwise, see, you can succeed beyond your boundaries. The Bible says you got these heart boundaries. You can succeed beyond those boundaries, but when you do, stress starts occurring. Now, the Bible talks about the carnal mind, in Romans chapter 8 talks about the carnal mind and the spiritual mind. And of course, we've done some really spooky stuff with that. But we don't want to be spooky. We want to be practical. Wisdom is about practicality. Wisdom is about the ability to put things into practice and get them to work where you are right now and in your life right now. So I want to talk about this just a little bit because we got to begin to create some differentiation in the thoughts of the mind and the thoughts of the heart. And we want to be able to have value for both, because we're not rejecting either one. You can't reject the thoughts of the mind, but neither can you reject the thoughts and beliefs of the heart. And so you want to learn to bring harmony between your mind and between your heart. Now, remember, your mind gathers information. Nothing wrong with it. Don't think that anything that I'm saying about using your intellectual capacities is wrong. Where using your intellectual capacities become destructive is when you let your intellect lead you instead of your heart. You see, your intellect has a place and your heart has a place. Your heart will always lead you into success in a way that sustains your sense of self. Your mind will lead you into a definition of success that you have picked up somewhere in life. And so, whatever you have defined as success, your mind is going to pursue. It's like a goal or target that your mind is going to pursue. And so if you pursue success just based on definitions of success, then you will very likely cross some boundaries that exceed your sense of self, or that bring difficulty to other areas of your life that you value. So, and let me just put a little parentheses here. I I think we should prosper. I believe in prosperity. I believe we should live prosperous lives. I believe, really we should be the models of prosperity to the world. We should be. We're not, but we should be. And I believe God wants us to prosper, but don't ever fall into the illusion that prosperity can bring you certain types of happiness. Prosperity, see, ego will say, because of definition of prosperity, ego would say that prosperity could bring you happiness that would be the equivalent to the marriage that you're losing while you're pursuing your prosperity. Ego would tell you that prosperity could bring you the happiness that the friends that you're losing because you're treating them wrong to find your success could bring you. You see, so if you have a definition of success and you're just pursuing that definition of success apart from trying to maintain this sense of who you are, you're going to really end up in troubled waters. And so you've got to start this thing, and it's such a paradox, and everything about the heart is a paradox. And in a paradox there are seemingly opposing truths, and you always have to live in the paradox if you're going to learn to live in your heart. And see, here's the paradox. While I believe I'm created for success, while I believe I am wired for success, while I believe I'm wired for prosperity, the paradox is I have to be able to be totally and completely content and feel right about myself, even if I don't have any of that. Because if I can't be content, I'll tell you, and this may be an oversimplification, but I tell you, sometimes I think life can't be any better than when I lay beside my wife and hold her hand and we watch television together. That's the honest truth. Sometimes I think I can't imagine that life could ever be any better than this very moment. The fact that I've got somebody beside me that loves me, somebody beside me that I'm enjoying life with, and so the question is, can I be happy with that? Can I be content with that, even if I didn't have this over here? Well, if your marriage is like my marriage, you've had to prove several times whether or not you could be happy broke. I mean, we've had to test this theory more than once. I just want you to know that. But you see, anytime you can't have contentment, then very likely ego is going to drive you to try to find something that's going to be equal to the contentment that you don't have. So you will always want to expand your sense of self while you're expanding your sense of success and while you're expanding your boundaries for success. So I want you to realize that the mind, again, seeks to preserve the ego and its ideas, and by being right, the heart seeks to preserve your identity by being connected and by being at peace and this sort of thing. So you've got all this information that you've learned about success, and you may be able to go to a certain level. And let me say something. It doesn't matter if you're you can be a $30,000 a year successful person. You can be a $50,000 a year successful person. You can be a $100,000 a year successful person. You can be a $1 million a year successful person. You can be a $10 million a year successful person. The success is not based on how much money you're making. Your success is based on whether or not you are experiencing the quality of life that you desire, and the amount of money that you're able to make does not take away from it, and it does not depend on it. So when I talk about success, it doesn't matter what level you're at. And, you could be making $1 million a year right now, and you could be saying, you know what? My goal, and one of the things I want to make $10 million a year. I got some things I want to do with it. That doesn't make you wrong or doesn't make you greedy or anything. It just means that you've got a different goal. You've got a different target in life. So it doesn't matter where you are on this scale. What matters is, can you have contentment and enjoy life where you are? Now, you have to realize that we live in incredibly troubled times, as you may well know. And we live in times that everything around us is more challenging financially than it has been in the past. You know, there's a scripture in the book of Jeremiah, I don't recall where it is right at the moment, but in the book of Jeremiah, God asked, I don't remember if he asked Jeremiah this or if he asked Israel this, but he says, listen, he said, if you wearied with the foot soldiers, how will you run with the horses? And basically he's saying, if you couldn't contend with life when things are kind of normal and easy, how are you going to contend with life when it gets difficult, when things truly get difficult? Now, you've heard me say this. I said this in the leadership ministerial meeting we had a few weeks ago. When times are good, to be honest, success is pretty easy. Now, you may be sitting and saying, well, it wasn't easy for me. Well, then you got some beliefs. That's all. You just got some belief problems. But really, when times are good and when the economy is good, really, you can go out and make money just by observing some general rules of success. And they're pretty generic. They pretty much apply across the board. And you can go out and you can do pretty well. You can do all right. But when times begin to get hard and the economy begins to get difficult, you are going to have to be able to follow success more closely matched to your heart. Because it's a whole different world out there now, and you're going to have to really have a wisdom that supersedes what you've been able to do when times are good. And when you face times being bad, and when you face a lot of threatening times, you've really got to be able to find a path that you can follow so that it's not dangerous and you're not going to lose everything along the way. And let me just say this, just so you'll know, I've lost everything I had 3 times. I mean, everything. And every one of those losses was greater than the other because every one of those losses I had accumulated more each time I lost everything. Matter of fact, let me tell you two stories about the heart that maybe you can identify with. I was out walking one day, just walking around my neighborhood, just praying and walking, and I walked by a house, saw an empty house, got this inspiration. I ought to buy that house. I thought, I don't want to buy that house. Last thing in the world, I want to buy a house. And but I just had this sense about it, So I come back home and told Brenda, I said, I walked by a house down there, and for some reason I just felt like I ought to buy this house. And she said, well, what do you want to do with it? I said, I don't know. We'll buy it and remodel it and see if we make some money off of it and, flip it. So I go to the courthouse or wherever and find out who owns the house, track him down. Turns out he's got 4 or 5 houses in our neighborhood for sale. And so I said, well, are you going to sell all of them? He said, well, yeah, I'll sell all of them. I said, well, would you give me a good deal if I bought all of them? He said, yeah, I'd give you a good deal if you bought all of them. I said, well, how much money you need down? And he gave me an amount. And really considering the fact that I didn't have a penny in my pocket or any money in the bank, I didn't figure the amount was too outrageous. Of course, I am a little bit of an optimist, So I go back home and I said, Brenda, I can't. I said, I don't know why, but I just feel like we ought to do this, and I'm not sure how all this will unfold, but we'll if you feel good about this, we'll do this. So I called the guy up and I said, all right, I'll buy all of your houses, and I said, give me 30 days to make the down payment and give me keys to all of them because I want to go look at them and kind of start figuring out what I'm going to do with them. So he gave me the keys to all of his houses. So I began to talk to people and tell people that I had 5 houses that I was going to remodel and sell. And a buddy of mine said, well, let me look at them. And so I went out and showed him a couple of houses. And so he said, well, you know what? I'll buy one of these and remodel them. I said, okay. So I said, well, here's how much down payment I got to have. And so he gave me a down payment, and that down payment just happened to be the exact amount of the down payment that I had to give the man on all of the houses. So I go back to the man with the down payment, and I said, well, now, will you finance these for me? And he did. He said yes. And so I bought 5 houses with the down payment that the man gave me on the down payment, 1 house. And what that turned into was us buying, remodeling, and flipping I can't remember, it was either 14 or 17 houses. And Alan, I don't even remember if you were on staff with me when I was doing this or not, but like there was a period of time there I didn't have to draw a penny anywhere else because I was making so much money, out from outside sources. One of those houses I bought for $9,000, remodeled it, sold it for $120,000. And we put together this plan, Brenda and I did, where we would completely remodel these houses. We'd put a new roof on them. We would refinish the floors. We would put new electrical. We'd put new plumbing, new windows, new air conditioning. Complete new doors. Everything was new. And these houses were about 1,800 to 2,200 square feet. And we would handpick young couples that were good families. And we would sell these houses to them at about $10,000 or $15,000 below market value, which meant they moved in without a down payment, which meant we brought up the quality of our neighborhood. And houses now in our neighborhood sell very regularly for 5 to 10 times as much as they sold just 15 years ago, just because we did this. So I don't even know how much money we made off of all that. All that happened because I listened to my heart. Every bit of it. Now people will write me letters sometimes and say, man, will you share some of your business experiences with me? I say, okay, listen to your heart. Because I'm really not a good businessman. I wish I was. I'd like to tell you I am, but I'm really not that good of a businessman. But I just know how to follow my heart. All right, now let me tell you another story about following your heart. We were getting ready to go do a meeting in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and like so many times when I have to do a meeting, I'll work half the night before I get ready to leave because you got so many things you have to do to get ahead and leave. And so the next day we're getting ready to head out to Tulsa. We're heading down the road, and I'm realizing, boy, I am really, really sleepy because I've worked nearly all night. And so I asked Brenda if she would drive. I said, you drive a minute. I said, but I don't want you to drive very long because I'm a king of power naps. I can take about a 10-minute power nap, and I can go for about another 4 hours, and I can do that for days. So I said, all I want to do is just take a power nap, and then I want to drive. And so we swapped seats. I sat down. Just as I was sitting in that seat, man, I had this sense of, don't do this. And in the few minutes that I was taking to rationalize it in my head, I went to sleep. It just took me that long to go to sleep. And when I woke up, we were skidding into a 60-mile-an-hour head-on collision. And as a result of that collision, I don't even know how many bones I dislocated. I had brainstem compression. I went blind. I ruptured disc. Fractured bones, tore ligaments, this whole deal. Well, economically, what this turned out was, for the first time in my life, I couldn't go to work as consistently. I've always gone to work consistently, and I've always been real diligent about managing whatever it is I'm doing. So I couldn't be there and couldn't be on top of things. And so in the process of not being there, not going to work, our organization is very systems oriented, and we created really, really good systems. And when these systems were in place, they worked well, and people received ministry. Things happened, and so as a result of me not being there, then I'm dealing with health problems, and I'm not there managing. I'm not on top of things. People started violating these systems, and one of the things with systems, if you're not managing them constantly, they can really go bad before you catch them. So the result of this was that just a few years ago, I was $2 million in the red. I was $600,000 behind on bills. And one of the things with our ministry, we've always paid our bills well. We haven't gone through those types of issues a lot. We've tried to always manage things and stay within our budget. So I'm $2 million in red, $600,000 behind on bills. Now, that's a story of how I made hundreds of thousands of dollars just by following my heart. That's simple. And then that's another story of how I lost hundreds of thousands of dollars by not following my heart. Now see, our tendency is to be religious and say, why did God let this happen to me? Let me tell you something. God says we have authority here on planet Earth. Now, God can, and notice I use the word can, legally, God can inspire us, God can lead us, God can help us, God can give us information, God can give us strength, but God cannot, because of the fact that He has given us authority in planet Earth, He cannot change the outcomes that we choose.
That's right.
Can't do it. Because He limited Himself by His word. If He breaks His word, He's a liar, and He's not God, and the whole universe falls apart. So, interestingly, and you know, it's amazing how many friends you have when everything's working. It's amazing how hard people are to find when you owe a couple million, when you lost a couple $1 million and you owe a few $100,000. And so, you know, it created some real hardships. So I would go into work, and I was still really struggling with physical problems. And I'd go into work, and I can't tell you the number of times I walked into the office over maybe about a 3-year period of time where I'd walk in, the bookkeeper would meet me at the door and say, if we don't have $100,000 by 2 o'clock, we're losing everything. And any of you who are partners or world changers with us, you know you never ever one time ever got a desperation letter. You never got one of these letters saying, if I don't hear from you today, I'll be gone, and all that kind of stuff, because that's just never the road that we believe we would take, or believe we should take. But what would happen is when I would walk in and the bookkeeper would meet me, and you know, some days it'd be $10,000, some days it'd be $30,000, some days it'd be $100,000. But when I'd walk in, and the staff would say, what are we going to do? And I'd say, we're going to do what we always do. And I'd say, we're going to sit down for a few minutes. You guys are going to get calm. We're going to get inside of our heart. We're going to reconnect to who we are in Jesus. And we're going to be about the Father's business. And you do what you're hired to do. You just minister to people and do what you're hired to do. And I'm going to follow God, and whatever path He leads me down is where I'm going to go. And basically, now that was about, you know, that was 3 years ago maybe. Well, you know, I'm not $2 million in the red anymore. I'm not behind on any bills anymore. And the real truth is there's every probability in the next few months that our ministry will be debt-free, completely debt-free. Now, you say, well, how did you get from here to here? Same way I got there. My heart. You know, here's the thing. You know, God's not making this stuff happen. We just don't realize when we abandon our heart, what we're feeling in our heart. The problem is you just don't know where you're going to land. You know, it's not sin. There was nothing wrong with the fact that I went to sleep. What was wrong was that when I had this sense of what I should do, I took time to try to rationalize doing something else. And in the process of trying to rationalize doing something else, I went to sleep. You say, well, why didn't God wake you up? I think He was like already telling me how to solve this problem. You know, the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not lack. He leads me in paths of how it should be. So following God will always be a journey that takes me away from lack, financial lack, emotional lack, relational lack, physical lack. is going to move me away from lack toward life as it should be. But the issue is, following him as my shepherd is a heart thing. It's not a mind thing. Now, we tend to always resist going into the unknown, because the unknown presents a threat. The unknown is basically a fear. Now, what we do know, the Bible taught this long before psychologists ever figured out, there are two root values or emotions that drive every single thing that happens in your life. One is love and one is fear. Now, be sure you understand that love basically has to do with value. I either feel valuable, I either feel precious, I feel I have worth, and if I don't have worth and I'm not valuable and precious, then I feel afraid. Because if I'm not valuable and precious, then God might hurt me or somebody else might hurt me. And so the feelings of safety are directly related to the sense of value that you have. So I'm going to naturally always avoid anything that produces fear or produces a low sense of value or minimizes my sense of value. Because if I go into anything that produces fear or reduced value, then I'm going to, in that absence of value, I'm going to start to feel afraid. I'm going to start to feel like something's going to happen to me. This is what the Bible calls condemnation. Condemnation is the expectation of something happening, of judgment or God doing something to you or things going bad in your life. Now, but the problem is, unknowns, your mind treats an unknown as a threat. So, because my mind treats an unknown as a threat, then I am always going to be resistant to go where I've never gone before. So now the Lord is my shepherd. He's trying to lead me away from lack, and He's trying to lead me into life as it should be. But in that journey to life as it should be, I'm always going to have to pass through the valley of the shadow of death. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil. Why? Because you're with me. Now, He's not taking me through the valley of the shadow of death because this is the way God teaches you, because He's going to take you through the bad times and test you. I'm not talking about that. The valley of the shadow of death is that feeling of fear and threat and intimidation and insecurity that I feel when I begin to go somewhere that is an unknown to me. So there's a real probability that when my shepherd is trying to take me to a place that's better than what I'm having now, the problem is better is always an unknown. See, it doesn't matter if you went from making $25,000 to making $75,000. Going from $75,000 to $150,000 is still an unknown, because it's different. It doesn't matter if you got healed 5 times in your Christian life and today you got a new sickness. Healing might be familiar to you, but healing of this sickness is different. It's an unknown. In other words, anything that's going to make your life better to a certain degree is an unknown. Now, there are different ways, and there's nothing wrong with them. There's different ways that we make something known to us, and sometimes we do it intellectually, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not putting down the fact that we use our brains. We should use our brains. That's just why Jesus said to count the cost. Anytime you get ready to do anything, count the cost. Look at it, count the cost. Why do you count the cost? Because if you count the cost, you look ahead and you say, these are the risks I'm going to run. These are some of the probabilities of what could go wrong. These are my hopes for what's going to go right. Can I make this journey and still feel safe? And so by counting the cost, you're making something seem more familiar to you. Therefore, it's not as much of an unknown, and you're more likely to make the journey all the way to the end. So intellectually, you count the cost. Intellectually, you say, do I understand this? Do I know how to do this? Maybe I need to go get some new job skills. Maybe I need to hire somebody that knows how to do this part of it. All of those things are part of evaluating and preparing for the cost. And all of those things will bring to you a certain degree of the known, which will produce a certain level of safety. There's nothing wrong with that. You're not unspiritual for doing that. Matter of fact, you're wise for doing that. But on a deeper level, I want to make sure that just because I've created all these intellectual safeties, that may make me familiar with the valley of the shadow of death. It may make me familiar with the territory that I'm about to traverse, but it does not mean that I'm going to stay on the path. It just means I'm going to feel safe while I wander for 40 years in the wilderness. Now you see, in the times that we live, it's really more important now to stay on the path. You know, if there had been 2 years difference in when I took that economical hit, I might not have recovered just because of where the economy is. And then I'd been, no, I wouldn't really, but the temptation would be to cry out to God and wonder why God's letting this happen to me. Well, there's a lot of variables about how things happen. I mean, God's always going to try to lead you to how life should be, but there's a lot of variables out there. And here's the key. Everything God leads you to do, He's going to lead you to do it in anticipation of what He can see that I can't see.
Yeah, that's good. That's right. That's very good.
Now, when we are feeling inspired, man, you got that sense. I can do this. This is who I am. I can do this. And particularly when we know, we just have this God sense about it. It's not so much a God sense. If you've been around me or Alan much, you don't really hear us say very often, oh, the Lord's leading me to do this. God's leading me. God spoke to me and told me to do this. And, I don't know what the total numbers are. They tell me that through the ministries that we've influenced and planted and the leaders that we've trained, they tell me that over the last 30 years, we have been indirectly involved in around 10 million people coming to Jesus. I got to tell you the honest truth. I ain't never prayed about that one time. When I started doing crusades overseas, I didn't pray about doing crusades overseas. I said, God, I hate the church in America, and I got to find somewhere to go that's interested in the gospel. So I'm going where they never heard the gospel. If you don't want me to go, you can tell me, but otherwise, I'm gone. That was really my prayer. I mean, almost verbatim. And I was true. If it's in the Bible, I ain't got to pray about it. If it's in the Bible, all I've got to do is stay connected to my shepherd so I don't get off the path. That's really all I got to do. Having this inspiration, when I say it feeling like something's a God thing, I'm not saying that you're sitting there with this awareness, this is God leading me to do this. And why don't you just really be truthful, and why don't you just go back and add up all the times you said that and it didn't work, and compare it to the time that you said it and it did work, and then decide maybe how good you are at that. Because but when do you think I stopped saying it? It's something being a God thing isn't because God is telling me to do it. It's because it's harmonious with God wants you to succeed. God wants your life to work. God wants you to be happy. God wants you to be filled. And so, to me, man, when I feel inspired and excited and I see opportunity, it's a God thing. And I'm going to give praise to God. My heart, I'm going to acknowledge God. I think, I tell God real often my prayers, God, I'm just so thankful that you wired the world to work this way. When I take herbs and they make me well, from some issue, I'm just like, God, it's not a matter of I don't need God. It's a matter of I am so thankful that you put this natural stuff here that we can find. I'm just, I'm thankful that we work the way we work. Everything that works is God. It's a God thing. So when you have a sense of a God thing, whether God spoke something or whether you just have this inspiration or whether you just have this dream, the number one reason people have a sense of something being God and then failing, number one reason is because we try to take control of the process. And that's where our intellect gets in the way of our heart. The first example, I'll never ever forget this. The first example I ever saw of this was in the Old Testament when Solomon died. His son, was going to be king, and Solomon's advisors went to him and said, your father taxed the people and caused these hardships, and what do you think we should do? And his son said, tell them that my father reigned with, reigned with whips. I'm going to reign with scorpions or something like that. In other words, you think he was hard? And so he was going to use force as the way to take control of the kingdom. So God sent a prophet to, was it Rehoboam, Jeroboam, and said, I'm going to give these 10 kingdoms to you, and you're going to be king of these 10 tribes, but I'm going to leave in Jerusalem because of the promise that I made to David, Solomon's father. I'm going to preserve Jerusalem, and he'll be king there. Now, you can't get any clearer than that. The prophet of the day coming to you and telling you God's giving you these 10 kingdoms. And not only that, the heads of those tribes came to him and said, we got together and talked about it. We want you to be our king. I mean, what else could you expect? So then insecurity comes in there, and mentally he starts saying, well, wait a minute. But see, the temple's up in Jerusalem, and if they go to the temple and worship every year, eventually their heart will turn back to Jerusalem. So how am I going to, I'll lose my kingdom. How am I going to keep the people bound to me if I don't do something? Bam. I know what I'll do. I'll set up a golden calf, one in Dan and one in Beersheba, and I'll tell the people, these are your gods, go worship them. You read something like that and you think, what are you thinking? What did he do? He tried to control the process by creating an intellectual scenario that made him feel safe. You remember the prophet that, I don't remember what his name was, the prophet, or I think it was Elisha, was telling somebody, he said, now, I want you to go do this way. When you go, he said, don't go back the way you came. Don't stay with anybody. Don't eat with anybody. And don't greet anybody in the way. And the guy goes. And so he's following divine instruction, but along the way he goes, I believe I'll just do this. And he ends up, was he the guy that the bears killed or somebody, got killed on the way back? It's like, what? He was obeying God. He got mad. No. He heard something. He had an inspiration. He had an idea. He had a leading of the Lord. But the problem was he intellectualized a way to do it. He stopped following the shepherd. When we try to take control of the process by making the process look like something we've done in the past, something that's familiar with us, something that we feel safe and secure about, and we're really no longer following God in our heart. We're not even following our heart, or we're not staying true to our sense of self, and we're not staying in touch with our inspiration and wisdom. We're now following the plan that we think will accomplish the goal. And so the end result is we end up staying in familiar ground and missing the target that God was trying to lead us to. Now, there's an exercise that I have. I don't know if I can get it covered here in 6 minutes and 46 seconds, but I'll try. It's called Painting Your Life's Picture. And I'll tell you some resources at the end of this session that you can get to find all of these if you want them. But painting your life's picture is where you paint a picture that you can see so it becomes familiar to you. And then you take yourself through a process to influence your heart to make the transition in a way that you stay comfortable with. So let's say that you want to deal with a financial area. Then what you would do is you would sit down and write a contract with yourself in longhand. Get you a book. Every time I do this, I'll go like to a bookstore and I'll get a real nice little book, that's got one of these magnetic tabs that folds over. And I'm not going to use this book for anything except this. I want it to be, real special. So you take that and you start out by writing. Well, actually, you start out by writing a description, one of these character sketches of this is me, and maybe your character sketch is going to be because of who I am in Jesus. I have incredible creative ideas, and I am comfortable with success, and I'm connecting with the people that I need to bring this about. So basically, you write the story or the picture of the outcome, but you write it in the first person present tense. And then you write a contract with yourself in this book. Page 1 is the picture, the sketch. Page 2 is a contract. On such and such a day, I enter into a contract with myself that I will experience these goals. I will experience this, whatever the contract is. And you might want to put a timeline on it, you might not, but then you date it and sign it, and you're in a contract with yourself. And then in this book, you're going to do a couple things that are going to take you about 6 minutes per night. And when we come back, we're going to talk about what this does for you and what happens in your own life and your own heart when you do this. And every night, what you're going to do is about 15 minutes before you go to sleep, when you start realizing you're about to go to sleep, you're going to come back and you're going to be laying there in bed, and you're going to take your notebook, and you're in longhand, you're going to write 2 or 3 statements about these things. And you have personal, present tense, and positive. And then you're going to evaluate, and I kind of skipped this part, I apologize for doing this out of sequence. Then you're going to, I know why I skipped it, because you don't do this until the second day. Now, you got this sketch, you got this contract, and you got these 2 or 3 positive statements that you're going to write. And I'm going to tell you how I've done this several times. I'm going to tell you just when we come back after lunch. We'll start out with this, because everything after lunch gets into tools for persuading your heart and how to tie this specifically to prosperity and success. But then every night you're going to write in longhand just 2 or 3 statements. Those 2 or 3 statements are going to be like I find and seize opportunities for success and prosperity. Maybe your second statement might be I am meeting and recognizing the people that I need to trust and link up with to accomplish my goals. And maybe, you never make more than 3 statements, 2, 3 at the most. Now, and then that's it. You're going to lay your book down, you're going to go to sleep. Now, here's what's going to start happening to you, and it will start happening usually within the first week. You will start having dreams that will change your capacity to go into the unknown. You see, dream cycles are a part of what prepare you for a new future. Your first third of the night when you go to sleep, you're just basically, you're defragging. It's like defragging a hard drive. You're just kind of getting the clutter out of your mind, And when you first go to sleep, you'll have dreams about what you watched on television or whatever. Now, in the middle third of your night, you have what I call prophetic dreaming. Psychologically, we call this precognitive dreaming. In the middle of the night, you're going to have dreams where they'll never be literal. They'll always be metaphoric or symbolic. And you're going to have dreams, and in those dreams, you're going to have symbolic dreams of seeing what you would be like fulfilling that goal. And when we come back from the break, I'm going to tell you why you'll have these dreams and why this happens. Now, why are you doing that? Because your heart will not let you go anywhere that you haven't seen first, that's not familiar to you. It's got to become familiar. Now, the last third of the night, which is usually right before you... Have you ever noticed you always have crazy dreams right before you wake up? Yes. Man, I'll tell you, you wake up in the morning, you think, call an exorcist, I'm pretty sure I'm possessed. Well, the last third of the night, those dreams are called venting dreams. And in venting dreams, these are not dreams about what you're trying to hold on to. These are symbolic, metaphoric dreams of what you're letting go of. So, in other words, all them nasty sex dreams that you have right before you wake up, they represent something else in your life that you're trying to let go of. And unfortunately, because we don't understand that, we wake up and we feel condemned about if we have some kind of weird dream. And what you really need to do is wake up and just immediately, and we'll talk a little bit about this process when we come back, immediately you release and let go of, you acknowledge, I am letting go of that, which obstructs my goals and dreams. Because what's happening, once you have a dream in the middle of the night that says, this is where my life is going, then your heart and mind work together to say, okay, then what have we got to get rid of? What beliefs and pictures have we got to let go of? And again, they won't be literal, they'll be metaphoric, and you will let go of it. Now stop and think about this. And I'll tell you, I've gotten, in the last week, I don't know how many testimonies I've gotten from people doing this that had incredible financial changes in their lives just from doing this dream. But just stop and think about it. Here's a tool that you could use for 6 minutes a night. And very probably within, a few months, few weeks or a few months, totally transform some particular area of your life simply because you're finding a way to make it familiar to you. And we'll talk some more about following our shepherd. Let me make just a couple announcements. 2 or 3 things I want to mention, and I'll explain them in detail later, that we have back there on the product table. We have, any of them, if we run out of them, you can order them and we'll ship them to you. But we have what's called Limitless Living, which is a heart physics exercise that helps you, and we'll talk about this in a later session, it helps you identify your limiting beliefs and put them off. And I use this exercise more than any other single exercise that I use in working with people. Second thing I want to mention, be sure if you're trying to make this journey, get the Wired for Success book. You want to have this book, you want to read this because there's volumes of information in there we're not going to cover in that. But another thing that we have back there that is a follow-up support to what you're going to be learning and reading this book is a seminar called Creating Wealth. And it takes you into just practical tool after practical after practical tool after practical tool for putting this stuff into practice. So we've got a lot of tools and resources back there that will support what you're learning. And you guys know me well enough to know it's how to put it in practice stuff. It's not a whole lot of theory. It's let's get down and do this. All right, Alan, you need to make announcements before lunch.
Here we go. Ushers, would you come? We're going to receive an offering. If you're writing a check, all this money will go into Impact Ministries. Write it to Family Bible Church, and by way of the internet, if you're joining us, you can go to our PayPal link there, and you can designate to Jim Richards Impact Ministries, and we'll make sure that they get 100% of this. All this goes into their ministry, so we'll give you an opportunity. Also, if you're interested in getting the CDs from the sessions today, Larry, they just go back to the booth and order them back there. Is that right? Let's go to the booth in the back and see Larry and his team, and they'll hook you up on ordering the CDs. Well, were you encouraged today? Wow, I can't wait till this afternoon and get the practical how to do all this stuff. Man, this is awesome.